This year can be special, but can implies a choice. And the calendar can change, and nothing about your life or business changes with it unless you do. What you choose to focus on, what you let dazzle you, and who you listen to are quietly building the life that you will be living 12 months from now. Hey guys, it's George. This podcast I recorded to you from a hotel room on the 11th floor in Cancun. There was loud music, there were people in the pool, and I had my old school headset on, but I had to get this episode out because it was hitting me so deep and God was screaming at me. And I'm in this like 3 or 4 week stretch, Cancun, Barbados, and then Tucson. And I don't like pre-recording episodes in advance. And so I'm doing them on the road. I tried to squeeze one in Barbados, but I didn't get it in. But this episode is huge. In between me facilitating these intensives on culture and team buy-in and customer journey and scaling, this keeps coming up for me. And I wanted to share this because it's powerful. So if you are new here or back, welcome to the Mind of George show. This is where we focus on what it takes to truly scale. Well, entrepreneurs understand it's not about hacks and tactics. It's about really aligning your mindset, your actions, your behaviors, your messaging, and your marketing to create sustainable growth that feels authentic. And if you are new here, welcome to the party. I share exactly what I'm actually walking through or my clients through and not just the highlight reel. And I was in Cancun with Kate for our friend Gabby's wedding. And there were about 80 people here, family members, people married for 40 years, 50 years, accomplished massive things. And I was deep in conversation with all of them. And it reminded me of a message that I'd wanted to share. Because right before I left for Cancun, I heard a message from my pastor, Levi Lusko, that landed so deeply. And God was screaming at me, record this podcast right now. And so I wanted to share because I think it's so easy to step into the new year and end up at the end of the year the same us. We make a new vision board, we talk about goals, but for most of us, and sometimes myself included, the only thing that actually changes is the date on the calendar or our paper. And being out of my environment has made it really clear. I got to reflect like at home, how I get into these grooves with my son, with my routines, with my relationships, with my friends. And when I actually step out of that groove, I realize how much of my life was running on autopilot, like just assuming relationships were fine or that my habits were intentional when really I was just following along the same tracks that were already worn in. And so in this episode, I'm going to break down 4 simple things that you can focus on this year that hit me hard and I believe can shift your entire year in your faith, in your life, in your business. And these are the 4 that we're going to cover in this episode. Number 1 is what you focus on, you will be formed by. Number 2 is it's easier to stick with what you start with. Number 3 is whatever you let dazzle you must be able to deliver you. And number 4 is who you listen to, you will be led by. So we talk about identity, not the identity the world or the results handed you with metrics and achievement, but your identity. And for me, my identity in Christ. And what happens for all of us when we actually believe that we're valuable and worthy before we perform. I think I might have also talked about my lack of self-control with all-inclusive buffets and a lot of things like that. But this one is deep and this one hit me really, really hard because our life can change in an instant and a 1 degree shift in our focus gives us a drastically different life in the future. And so by the end of this episode, my hope for you is simple, that you will walk away with one of these 4 lenses circled for you, underlined, dotted, teed, and focused on, and something that you're actually going to apply to your days so that 11 months from now, you're grateful you didn't just let the year happen to you, but you chose to make the year special because this year can be special, but the can is your choice. And so without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George show. Today looks a little different if you're watching this on video. I even whipped out the old headset microphone because I am traveling. My public service announcement is that the next couple of podcasts are not going to look the same, as I'm currently in Cancun, Mexico for another day. And then I go home for 12 hours and then I fly to Barbados. I've never been to Barbados. And then come back and then Tucson, Arizona, because the new year
kicks off new desires for a lot of people. And I'm on the road facilitating team intensives, building team culture, helping with buy-in, customer journey strategy, scaling strategy. And I'm excited, but I'm walking into a 3 to 4 week period of living out of a suitcase. And if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you know I don't like to pre-record episodes massively in advance because I just love them being timely and in the right moment, which is actually what leads us to today's podcast. So I am here in Cancun at a wedding. Me and Kate are here celebrating our dear friend Gabrielle and her marriage as of last night to her husband, Chris, cutest couple ever. They've been together for 13 years. They were high school sweethearts who have walked through the fire together and grown closer together. And Gabby has actually been on this podcast. And so I'll make sure that the team links it in because Gabby is also a massively successful entrepreneur. She is an influencer. She owns an agency. She is like the queen of operations. And it's really, really interesting because I'm going to talk today about different year, different choices, different results that we can have. And this one is straight from the heart. So normally when I'm recording these solo episodes, I have notes in front of me, guidelines, which you guys have asked for. And I do have notes in front of me this time, except I am now addicted to my digital notebook. And if you're watching this, you can see I have an entire page of notes on this podcast. But I want to kind of set the tone and set the frame because as we were at this wedding, Gabby has a massive family. There's 80 people here, and I think 50 of them are family members. And they gave speeches at the welcome dinner the night before the wedding, at the event before, and at the wedding itself. And it being early on in the year of 2026, it was a massive reflective moment for me. And I'm listening to these incredible people that are just loaded with wisdom, married for 50 years, married for 44 years. And my heart was so full just listening to the stories and the advice, and all of it is so applicable to entrepreneurship. And on the flight out here, I had taken some notes because right before I flew out to Cancun, I was at my church, Fresh Life Church, and Levi Lusko is my lead pastor. And he dropped an incredible sermon on how to make this year different. And so much of it landed for me in the biblical lens in my relationship with Jesus. But as I was reflecting, God was screaming to me, like, share this on the podcast, because the points were so valid and so simple. And so I think that this is a massive time of the year for all of us. It's a massive invitation, whether you did it over the holidays, whether you did it into the new year, maybe you even made a vision board. But instead of going through the pace, instead of going through the motions, instead of checking the boxes, actually like feeling into what do I want to be different? What do I want to bring differently into 2026? And I'm here in Cancun and I see so many people here celebrating this love and celebrating this marriage and this wedding, which is so beautiful because the marriage didn't, like, nothing's complete now that they're married. It actually all just begins, and the choices they make and the seeds that they plant today and how they honor themselves and how they love each other and how they choose each other is going to dictate the fruit of this marriage like they've done their whole relationship. And it's no different for us in our business, in our life, in our relationships. What we choose today, what we choose to focus on, what little changes we make, what we choose to dream about, the actions that we choose to take in 90 days, 180 days, 365 days from now, we're going to look back and we are going to be a byproduct of the choices that we made. And this is entrepreneurship across the board. And it was either last week or the week before in the solo episode where I shared a lot of wisdom from my mentors, from clients, from people I've been talking to. And so I'm in this big season of reflection. And I think the biggest fear that I have, not only for me, but for everybody I love, you, is that we're in 2026 and the only thing that's going to change is the date on the calendar. And being away from my environment, being away from my son, being away from home and being in a place where people are coming on vacation, I see so much space to reflect, but stepping out of my container has allowed me to realize how precious and valuable each and every single moment is. How precious and valuable every single choice is, from the food I put in my body, to my workouts, to my prayer time, to the intentionality of messaging my son, to intentional time that I'm pouring into Kate, to texting my friends at home. Because when we are in our same environment over and over, we end up creating grooves. And when we create those grooves, sometimes we think we're growing, sometimes we think we're changing, but we're really actually just flowing inside the grooves that have already been created. And I know me as a perfect example is my best friend TJ, who's been on this podcast. A lot of you know TJ. TJ and I see each other multiple times a week. We go to church together, we do family dinners, we text each other. But I realized when I left my environment, him and I hadn't talked. And then he texted me out of nowhere. And I realized that when I removed myself from my environment, I wasn't being conscious and intentional about our friendship. I was more operating in the groove of the day to day. And I think about that in our business. I think about that in this podcast. I think about that with our clients, with our team members, of how dangerous it can be to fall into the same groove. And so the reason I'm sharing this is I believe what has been on my heart and God has put on my heart to share is that we can't allow the calendar to change, but be full of the same exact things that we brought in from the previous year, which is why a couple episodes or an episode ago, I was sharing reflections of like the biggest lessons people had in 2025 and what they're going to bring into 2026. And I know because I shared particularly one of them that made me stop in my tracks. And it said, you can't be the external solution to somebody's internal problem. And it caused me to reflect for a couple of days and really dive into like how I coach and how I serve and how I consult and how I see myself. And so my invitation for all of us is to really, really be intentional. And so I'm going to pull up our Remarkable because there are 4 big takeaways that I'm going to share, because the title of the sermon that Levi shared, and I can link this in the chat. I highly recommend that you watch this sermon. I don't care where you are in your relationship with Jesus. It's a massive invitation. I've shared it with 10, 15 people personally, but the title of the sermon was "This Year Can Be Special." And the reason can is highlighted because can implies choice, and the choice is up to us. And so one of the things that Levi really, really hit on that I loved was our identity. And I know for me, I love Jesus with all of my heart. And I had an identity of the world for most of my life. I was influenced by what the world thought of me, by world metrics, by world measures, by world successes, which created this constant burnout cycle of pursuit to let down, pursuit, let down, pursuit, let down, because I was trying to please everybody but God himself. But the reason identity is so powerful is the foundation of these 4 things that can apply to everything, including your business and entrepreneurship, is that when we know something is valuable, we change how we treat it. And I think about my life. I think about my business. I think about my health. I think about my relationships. And I think about all the moments where things have gone their best and worked their best. And then I think about all the moments when things were hard, or they struggled, or they were resistant, or I gained weight, or I ate poorly, or I didn't work out, or I self-isolated. And the foundation of both of those things is identity. And the identity is, do I believe that I'm valuable? Do I believe that I'm worth it? Because when I believe that I am valuable, that I am worthy, not because of what I do or how I perform, but I am innately valuable, it changes how I treat myself. And I know right now I'm in an all-inclusive resort, which means there is unlimited food. And from the guy who used to weigh 100 pounds more than he does now, it's been really interesting to watch my habits and behaviors, because I went to a buffet breakfast and I ate a lot. And then I was like, oh my God, let's go get tacos. And then I realized, I'm like, what am I doing? I don't feel good. So then I went on like an 8-mile run. And the run wasn't like, oh, I'm punishing myself for the food. The run was like, oh man, like I'm going to turn this food into fuel because I work really hard. I don't want to feel heavy. I don't want to feel lethargic. I don't want to skip my workouts. But underneath it is this value that I now have for myself. And so when we think about what makes 2025 different than 2026, or what makes us consistent with some behaviors or inconsistent with others, is that the things that we're consistent with, we're consistent with them because the result that they create is something that we value because we value ourselves. And so I think that that's the most important premise. And I know I throw out the term all the time of self-love, and I think it's misused all the time, and people have maybe like a hang up with it or an ick around it. And I think that that's really just an invitation to explore it. It's just a word. It's just a phrase that asks us, like, do we really value ourselves? Do we really value what we bring to our business? Do we really value what we bring to our relationships? Because that value that we have for ourselves can't come from the external world. It can't come from the results we create or don't create. It can't come from the feedback somebody gives us or doesn't give us. It actually has to come from us, which is what dictates our actions. And when Levi was breaking this down, he shared, and I'm going to get into these 4 lessons right now, and I'm going to make them really easy, really poignant, and an invitation for you. And even if I'm sharing these 4, only one lands, that's the one that I invite you to take action on. That might be the one that you take action on in your business. That might be the one that you take action on in your health. That might be the one that you take action on in your relationship. Or if all 4 of them land, then take action on all of those. But I'm sharing this humbly because it landed for me deeply. And I have so many notes for myself personally, and I'm going to break the 4th wall and I'm going to share those notes. And so before I break every single one of these down, I'm just going to share with you the 4 of them. So remember, the context of all of this is, how can you make 2026 special? Because this year can be special if you choose to make it special. And the foundation to all of it is your identity, which is not one of the items on the list. It is the foundational requirement, which is we do the work by looking in the mirror and not rejecting what is reflected back to us, but reflecting on it and using it as an invitation. Because our actions, our thoughts, our behaviors, and our words are very, very telling about the relationship with ourselves. And the whole premise of this podcast is that relationships will always beat algorithms, especially and most importantly, the one with yourself. And so the first foundational piece is our identity. And there is no finish line to identity. There isn't this magic wake up of like, I love myself, it's great, and it works forever. No, it's I wake up and I choose to love myself through my intentionality, my actions, and my behaviors. No different than no friendship lasts without effort. No romantic relationship lasts without effort. No parenting relationship works without effort. But we have to understand that the most important place to put that effort is with ourselves first. So that's the foundation. And then the 4 big takeaways, or the 4 big action items on how to make 2026 a special year, boil down to these 4. Number 1, what you focus on, you will be formed by. What you focus on, you will be formed by. Number 2, it's easier to stick with what you start with. It's easier to stick with what you start with. Number 3, whatever you let dazzle you must be able to deliver you. And number 4, who you listen to, you will be led by. Who you listen to, you will be led by. So I'm going to break each one of these down with my notes, but my invitation for you is to see where they land for you. Okay? So the first one is, what you focus on, you will be formed by. As my best friend TJ says, who's been on this podcast, is where you point your finger, your power goes. And so for me, the notes that I wrote in this one were really around where I spend my time. Am I on my phone? Am I listening to music? What am I consuming on YouTube? What books am I reading? Who am I spending time with? What conversations am I allowing myself to be a part of? Am I having above the line conversations, which means possibility, positivity, positive outcome? Or am I having below the line conversations, which is complaining, gossiping, and really being clear with it? Because my notes were to fill myself with God, because I can't afford not to. And the one takeaway I have for myself in this situation that I wrote down is, if I can't comfortably pray in a situation, knowing that whether I'm watching a show, whether I'm at a dinner conversation, whether I'm in a business meeting, that I would be as comfortable if God and Jesus were standing there watching me, then I don't belong in that situation. And that was my big takeaway for what I focus on, I will be formed by. And it's something I'm bringing into 2026, that I know Jesus is next to me in every single moment. But there are plenty of times when I reflect on 2025 where I watched a TV show that didn't feel right, or I listened to a song and was like, oh, I want to change it, but I kind of like it. Or I whipped out DMX from 10 years ago because I was having a really, really bad time. And not the song where he prays, but ones that are inappropriate. Or I stayed in a conversation that didn't make me feel good, that wasn't improving upon the silence, that wasn't kingdom led. And so my big number one is, if I can't pray in a situation, or if I can't have God in that situation with me with pride, I don't belong in it. Number two, it's easier to stick with what you start with. And we talk about this all the time. I've probably talked about this 300 times on the podcast. But the start of our day is what dictates the results of our day. Our intentionality, keeping our word to ourselves, what we fill ourselves up with in the morning. Meaning, if we wake up and the first thing we do is scroll social or read bad text messages or go read the news, we're basically setting the tone for the day that it's not going to be good. But when we wake up and we choose to spend it in silence, we choose to do a workout, we choose to drink our water, we choose to pray, we choose to meditate, we choose to do something that fills us, and we set the tone for the day, it's a lot easier to carry that momentum into the rest of the day, which dictates the choices that follow through that day. And I'm going to use myself as an example. On the mornings where I wake up and I stick to my floors and ceilings, I hit my wedge of expectations, and I start with a workout, it is at minimum 10 times easier to eat healthy the rest of that day. I make healthy choices. I drink more water. I go to sleep on time. When I wake up and I don't start with that, I end up drinking too much coffee, overeating, not drinking enough water, at 4 p.m. realizing I missed a workout, feeling guilty, trying to react to it, and then having a struggle through the day. And so the second one is, it's easier to stick with what you start with. The third, whatever you let dazzle you must be able to deliver you. So think about dazzle as a distraction, and think about deliverance as your highest and best self. We are inundated with distractions. We are inundated with them. It's how businesses run in the world that we live in. Who can get your attention, who can keep your attention, who can monetize your attention. You look at the media, it is fear mongering. You look at social, it is comparison, comparison, comparison. And all of those things are just distractions. And I know this still comes up for me because I get stuck in a YouTube short roll rabbit hole. I'll be sitting on my bed and I'm like, oh, I'm going to read my Bible today. I'm going to pray today. I'm going to write a letter today. I'm going to go play with my son. And I make the commitment. And then 30 minutes later, I realize I've been distracted by something completely different. I said I wanted something, but I got dazzled by something else that isn't actually moving me closer to my goals or closer to my vision or closer to where I want to be. And so when we really understand the world that we live in, the things that we're dazzled by, the things that are capturing our attention, could be conversation, could be consumption. Those are distractions that more often than not are preventing us from living the life we want, achieving the version of ourselves that we're after. And he said one good line that I wrote down and highlighted. And I don't remember the author he got it from, but he said, anxiety is the result of the overlove of good things. And the note that I wrote is that I belong to Jesus, and the only person I want to dazzle me is God. Not my car, not my money, not my houses, not my friends, not my results, just God. And so that was the third. And then the fourth one, the final one, is who you listen to, you will be led by. And I've alluded to this a couple of times in this conversation already. Who you listen to, you will be led by. which means the things that we allow to influence us, the people, the conversations, the music, the podcasts, the books, the friends, the family members, whatever we allow in is leading us somewhere. And if we are unintentional about what we consume or what we listen to, we will end up somewhere that we didn't intend because it led us there. And I loved how Levi summarized this one. He said, don't listen to everyone, but be willing to listen to anyone. And I love that line because it gives us the power of discernment. We don't have to listen to everyone, but we can be willing to listen to anyone. But using discernment, we ask ourselves, am I going to let this person lead me? Do I desire their outlook? Do I desire their life? Do I desire their results? Is this going to get me closer to what it is I've been praying for or setting my vision towards? And another short way to remember that one is to be a picky eater and a selective listener. To be a picky eater and a selective listener. And so those were the 4 big takeaways that Levi shared on how 2026 can be special if we choose to allow it to be. But it is not this series of home runs. It is not this massive swing of the bat. It is not this intensity. It's actually all these micro moments of consistency throughout our day. What I focus on, I'll be formed by. Okay, well, if I pause myself throughout my day, where am I spending my time? Am I spending my time above the line or below the line? Is this choice, is this thought, is this action going to get me somewhere that I would like to be? Or is it keeping me further away from where I say I desire to be? It's easier to stick with what you start with. Nothing happens by accident. Do I have a process to make sure that I'm consistently hitting my floors on the things that will get me closer to my goal? Am I being a good father? Am I being a good partner? Am I being a good friend? Am I being a good steward? Am I being a good business owner? Number 3, whatever you let dazzle you must be able to deliver you. Let me check in on my day. Oh my God, I've been scrolling through Netflix too long. You know what? Maybe I should go for a walk. Maybe I should pick up a book. Maybe I should pray. Maybe I should whip out my notebook and write some notes. Maybe I should ask myself some questions and build that relationship with myself. Maybe I should open screen time on my iPhone and see what's been dazzling me to understand why I feel the way that I feel. That line that he said, anxiety is the result of the overlove of good things. I can think of hundreds of moments where I've had anxiety out of the fear of losing something that I never really had in the first place, that never really brought me joy. It's just an overabundance of it and missing that same thing with my relationship with myself and God. And then the 4th one is who you listen to, you will be led by. That one's pretty self-explanatory. And I think the most powerful part of all of this is it's just an invitation. At the end of the day, at the end of my life, there's only one person that I get to answer to, and that's God. And when I'm on this earth, the only person responsible for my results is me. I can't blame the world. I can't blame my circumstances, but I can always take responsibility for my choices because I have the full ability to influence those and the next ones that I'm going to take. And I think as we have this conversation, and I'll have it again next year for myself and the next year for myself, because there is no finish line to this. It's just growth. It's just an opportunity for us to ask ourselves, are we squeezing as much lemon out of the juice of our life as possible? We're the ones that determine how serious we take this. We're the ones that dictate what actions follow this, or this just becomes shelf-help, something we heard again. And I say that because I had to listen to this and have mentors tell me this for a decade before it finally landed. And so maybe this is your first time, maybe this is your 10th, or maybe this is the time it becomes a catalyst. But the year that we want to reflect on in 11 months is dictated by what you do the moment you stop listening to this podcast. Maybe you made a vision board, but maybe that vision board wasn't truly what you wanted. Maybe it's what the world said you wanted, your family said you wanted, but what do you truly want? Maybe that vision board was made out of reaction to last year instead of out of visioning for what you actually desire. Because when Levi said this, it landed for me. With the power of Jesus, nothing has to say the same. There is no such thing as it is what it is in Jesus. It can change instantly. It can change in a heartbeat, and he's done that for my life. And so I'm just throwing this out there as an invitation. This year can be your best year, but it's going to require that you dive into you and you start making intentional choices, not complex ones, not overly adjusted ones, not compensatory ones, but simple ones, consistent ones that create permanent change and allow us to grow and grow and grow. And so that's what I wanted to share today. From a hotel room on the 11th floor in Mexico with a lot of loud music and, people in the pool, before I probably record another one of these in Barbados. And so I'm just asking for your prayers and blessings on my travel. I wanted to share this. I want to hear how this lands for you. I want to hear how this resonates for you. But most importantly, I just invite you to take at least one of these and give it some time. Take at least one of these and implement it into your day-to-day. Implement it into your business. Into your business. Implement it into your relationship. Implement it into your friendships. And be consistent with it. Because I want you to look back 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and thank yourself for taking it seriously. So I will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.